Hey, it is Xennial Gamer back with another Monster Family review video. Today we're going to be talking about the Barbarian Kings. Now, excluding Hrungir, who you can see I have in D tier, this is probably my favorite class of Nat 4s. Definitely near the top, if not my favorite class. Has one of my absolute favorite Nat 4s, Mimirr, who we'll talk about at the end of the video. For today, with this video, what we're going to be doing is talking a little bit about each monster, their kit, some recommended builds, and then also some recommended places where I would use them. So we're going to start off with Hrungir, who again, I have ranked in D tier. You can see I have him runed. The runes are not special or exciting. I think I was just put him on runes so that I would have runes on him. So we're in we're in Shield Well Nemesis. If you were going to use him consistently, I would definitely recommend Violent or Rage. The main reason that you would want him in Violent or Rage, honestly, is because of his skill 3. So his skill 3 is kind of unique. As far as I know, it's the only skill 3 in the game that has a built-in Violent proc. Basically, it's going to attack the enemy. It does relatively decent damage, so it's got fairly high multipliers. But it says that you instantly recover a turn and prevent this attack from going on cooldown with a 40% chance. In other words, you can just use skill 3 over and over and over if you get lucky. I'm not a big fan of RNG, guys. You know that. So that is pretty much why I've got Hrungir in D tier. I think that his brothers do the exact same things on skill 1 and 2. Mimirr is attribute neutrality. Like, Hrungir does absolutely nothing special. He's just a monster you take into the match if you want to have fun, and you don't care if you win or lose. It's just straight up gamble, roll the dice. Now, his skill 2 is single turn stun. It's the same thing as Surtr, so we'll talk about those on the monsters that I kind of value a little bit more. And his skill 1 is the same as all of the other BKs, which is just attack the enemy, potentially land some continuous damage. And then he has a guild content resistance lead, which makes absolutely no sense in a nuker. Honestly, one of the worst Nat 4s, maybe the worst LD4 in the game. Hall of Heroes, by the way, of course. But there you have it, guys. So as far as Hrungir, I would not recommend building him. I would not recommend using him unless you want to just go YDCB style and try and see if you can get the Rauk version of a skill 3 on a monster. Probably fun for maybe like Goodwill or matching up with guildies just so you could see some cool animations, but not a monster I would ever bring into any kind of contest that you care about winning. Okay, next up, we've got Surtr, who I've gotten B tier not that long ago, like before the Onimushas. I would have had him at least in A tier. Surtr's primary purpose is that he kills monsters through effects that resist death. So that means that he can kill through a Triana, he can kill through a Miho, anything that's going to resist death, he will be able to kill. However, unfortunately, or actually fortunately for us, the Onimushas do the same thing and do it better, so I had to downgrade him a little bit. With that said, he does still have a really nice kit. So, I've got him runed as a Miho killer. This is an old build that I had. Unfortunately, he does not have a 100% crit rate. I would strongly advise, if you do want to use him as a monster that's going to try and kill through death, he does have a 100% crit rate. Probably needs to be a little bit faster also. I think I've stolen some runes from him over time. He doesn't necessarily need Violent. I would probably put him on Rage. You can use him on Violent to turn cycle, but I would personally use him on Rage to make sure that I landed that kill, because if you rock the skill 3 and don't do enough damage or miss a crit, then you're in trouble because you gotta wait for it to cycle back. You do want him to be a little bit tanky, because unless you're guaranteed to outspeed the enemy, you want him to be able to take a hit. The Mihos can hit anybody at random. And then beyond that, you know, just enough speed that he's speed-tuned, and then lots and lots of offensive stats. Now, his skill 3, I already said, the main thing about his skill 3 is that it will kill through any effect that resists death, but you should also notice, when it's on cooldown, he gets an increased attack speed, and he recovers 10% HP every turn. That's the same as most of the... I think all the Barbarian Kings, except for Hrungir, have that in their skill 3. So the attack speed increase and the HP recovery is really nice. It gives them some self-sustain. And it is one of the reasons why Violent is nice on these guys, because you could potentially heal 20 or 30% in one turn, just as self-recovery. Skill 2, it's the same thing. We have a stun and also an HP block, or recovery block. The stun does go up to 100% once he's skilled up, and then the skill 1 is the same as all of the other BKs. He does also have a guild content defense lead, not generally the most useful when we think about how we're using him. We'd prefer to have either speed or attack, But it is nice that since he's primarily a guild content monster, at least it is a guild content leader skill that's not worthless. Overall, I probably wouldn't build him unless you somehow do not have an Onimusha, but considering that the 7-year anniversary is out right now, everybody probably has one from those scrolls. So since the Onimushas do exist, I think Surtr serves a little bit less purpose. You still can use him to kill through a Triana passive, so he's not completely useless, but he is little hard to set up and a little hard to build a comp around. Really has no value in PvE, he's just basically a guild content monster. Okay, next up, we are moving into the good parts of this monster family, guys. So we've got Hraesvelg, who I'm sure I butchered the name, but the Wind Barbarian King. So, the Wind BK, he's awesome actually in a lot of areas of this game. So let's start off with PvE purposes. For PvE purposes, he's amazing in Alunia. He's also really good in Giants B12. He's good in Water Rift. Possibly work him into some Predator teams. He's really good kind of all-purpose. Part of the reason for that is because of just the balance of his kit. So his skill 3 right here is an AoE attack that also does attack buff and speed buff for your entire team. Now this is, you can't really underestimate like the value of this. Attack buff and speed buff while still doing damage to the enemies. It's really big, and then on top of that, it's only a 3-turn cooldown for a 2-turn buff, so it cycles really well. His skill 2 is a branding effect, which means you do 25% additional damage. That's why he's so good in the rifts and some other PvE areas. This is only a 2-turn skill down. And then the skill 1 continuous damage is what makes him great in Giants B12, because he's got the rest of this great kit and he adds some continuous damage. Now, the leader skill makes him really useful in Labyrinth. Attack power of allies increased by 33% in guild content. So think of monsters, Labyrinth bosses like Leos. You can use him as an attack lead, and then an attack power and speed buff, and try to use like a Katarina invincibility comp, for example. So really just generally great all-around PvE monster. But he's also pretty decent in guild content PvP. Now, you're going to rune him slightly different for each meta. You can see I don't have mine in Will Runes. Obviously, if he was being used in PvP, then he should be in Will Runes. Generally speaking, for guild content, you're going to want him, if you're using him on offense, you're going to want him on Violent Will. If you're using him on defense, you can put him on either Violent Will or Despair Will. And then you may also use him in Special League. And in Special League, it's kind of the same thing. It depends on your team comp. You would either go Violent Will or Despair Will. Either of those work. For his overall rune set, I do recommend, obviously the speed is mostly going to come down to the speed tuning within the team that you're using. So it's not that you have a target speed for him, it's that you're going to want him to act first or second on whatever team you use. So for example, in Alunia, when I ran him with Savannah, I actually had the Savannah going first to put up a defense break, and then I had him going second so he would give my team the attack buff, but his skill 3 would also do more damage on that defense break. So speed tuning is basically where you're going to go for the target speed. You do want to make him reasonably tanky because, once again, on the skill 3, he does get that boosted attack speed and sustain, so he can work for you in a longer match. He's not a complete bruiser, but he is something in the direction of a bruiser. And so making sure that he can survive and heal himself back up is really useful, particularly in those PvP metas. Beyond that, I would certainly recommend putting him in a high crit rate, high crit damage, high attack build. So yeah, I'm basically saying give this dude all the stats, right? He is a little stat hungry. That is the one thing about the Barbarian Kings. The 3 that are really good, the 2 S tiers and the double S tier, they're all super, super stat hungry, but they pay you back. If you treat them well, they will treat you well. So give him as much damage as you can, make sure he can survive, speed tune him appropriately, and then you probably want to give him a little more accuracy than I've given him, a little more than 20. The main thing he needs accuracy for is the brand, which is pretty powerful, having that brand, but it's not a game breaker if you miss it. So because he needs so many stats, I'm happy with him somewhere in that 20 to 30% accuracy range. Okay, next up, we've got Aegir. Now, I've got Aegir and Hraesvelg both in S tier. To be honest, Hraesvelg is probably a little bit better of an all-purpose monster, and I should have rotated them in the order that we did this video. But they're both definitely S tier monsters. The main reason I would have put Hraesvelg ahead of Aegir, meaning I should have done him second, is because of all those PvE benefits I talked about. Aegir isn't really much of a PvE monster, but he is an amazing PvP monster. He's great on guild content offense. Right now, he's not working in a lot of guild content defenses, but he has been meta in the past, and I do believe that he'll become meta again at some point in the future. And then he is really, really strong in RTA, well, Special League, particularly 4-star Special League, but he's actually still pretty good in RTA. He's been a meta pick for Guardians in several seasons in the past, and I still run into him on occasion in both Special League and RTA, and if somebody has given him just like really, really good runes, he is a nightmare to deal with. So, overall kit, his skill 3 right here, the Confiscate will take 50%. It actually strips one buff and then takes 50% attack bar from the target twice. So, potentially, you can strip immunity and take 100% attack bar. Or actually, you can strip immunity and take 50% attack bar, because I think the attack bar reduction comes before the strip. Or, if there is no immunity, you can take 100% attack bar. Now, this is an absorb, not a reduction, which means that he immediately turn cycles himself. So, if you get that full 100% Confiscate, you're going to go again a second time. Now, the skill 2. Forgot to mention this on Hraesvelg, but this is actually true for all of the Barbarian Kings who have the Wrathful Attack. Not only does it brand, but it also boosts their own attack bar by 50%. Now, for Hraesvelg, this is nice because he's got an attack speed buff when the skill 3 is on cooldown, and the attack bar boosting from the skill 2. It allows him to cycle pretty well. For Aegir, this is nuts because he's got the attack bar absorb on skill 3. He also has the speed boost and the healing on skill 3. So he can basically take all your attack bar, turn cycle himself back into his skill 2, take a 50% attack bar boost, and effectively lap you, moving him into his skill 1, same skill as all of the others, but then a violent proc off this skill 1 will bring him straight back to the skill 3, where he takes your attack bar again. So this guy can literally turn cycle through his entire skill kit with one violent proc, and basically he could go skill 3-2-1, 3-2-1 on one violent proc. He can take 6 turns on one violent proc. It's nuts, guys. Now, on top of that, he does have pretty good multipliers. He does pretty good damage. Honestly, so obviously, if you're running him on any kind of defense or in any kind of RTA Special League, Violent is kind of mandatory on him because of the turn cycling ability. Violent Will would be the recommended rune set. But if you're just using him on offense, which is what I do, I just use him on siege offense once in a while, then Rage Will, I find, is actually fine. He is just ridiculously stat hungry. So giving him a violence set that makes all the stats he needs is tough. It's going to take away a violence set from a Nat 5 or another monster that you might use more frequently or that you use on a defense, which is the key for me. My best sets go to my monsters on siege defenses. So, I use Rage Will because I'm able to make the stats on a set that's not as important to me. Now, accuracy is very important for him. I've only got 44. That is definitely too low. The one thing I will say is that when you're using him on offense, the majority of the fire and water monsters you face rarely have resistance builds. It's usually like the Trianas that'll be in resistance. If a Commune is in a resistance build, I often find it's more likely that he's in a 5-star base. Once in a while, you might see a Commune Vigor Skogul where the Commune is a resistance build. But overall, most of the teams that you would bring Aegir into, the fire and water monsters usually don't make for good resistance builds. So I think 50 accuracy or so you can get away with on him, but if you can get more, definitely worth it. Lots of crit rate, lots of crit damage, lots of attack. You do want him to be able to survive. Once again, he heals off his skill 3. So the overall build, you want to go kind of like what I have here, but what I would adjust on this build, a little less crit damage, a little more attack for better balance, a little more accuracy for sure. Again, speed is all about just speed tuning him to make sure that he works in the correct turn order with your comps. He is basically a stripper. So if you're going to run him as the only stripper in your team, he should act first. But if you're going to run him with another stripper so that you can turn cycle him, which is what I would do, Iris, for example, would be a great one. Then you want to make sure he acts second behind the stripper. Or if there's a buffer there as well, then make sure he acts last behind the stripper and the buffer. Or same thing, if there's a defense breaker, make sure he acts last behind them. I would boost his crit rate as well. You can tell this build was done before the crit rate bug was fixed. But with that said, he is crazy stat hungry. He's a multi-hitter on the skill 3, and because of the amount of turn cycling he does, you can get away with him not doing max damage every hit. The low attack here, the low crit rate here, you can honestly get away with this because I'm taking so many more turns than you. It's more important that I have that survivability and, of course, that I have that accuracy. Okay, last up, we have got one of my favorite monsters in Summoner's War, period. Absolutely one of my favorite monsters, Mimirr. Guys, this is Mimirr number 1. This is Mimirr number 2, or maybe it's the other way around. I think this guy's stats are a little bit better. The Mimirrs have gotten some of my best Violent Will sets for a very long time. I did only maybe 3 months ago finally take away the best of the best sets because I don't use them on Siege Defense. But if my, 30 best rune sets are on Siege Defense, the Mimirrs get 31 and 32. I mean, they are just that good. So, these guys are basically like light Aegirs with one big difference. I forgot to mention Aegir's leader skill, which is also a really useful one, by the way. He has an HP leader skill, so it makes him pair really well with Skogul's, for example. Guild content, of course, but the Mimirr leader skill is speed. And Mimirr is a control monster with a speed leader skill, which just makes him amazing. So why is he a control monster? Well, I said he's like a light Aegir. Their kits are nearly identical. Actually, the skill 2 is the exact same. The skill 1 is the exact same. The skill 3, it's different, but kind of the same. Where Aegir will absorb your attack bar, Mimirr just reduces your attack bar, but he sets it to 0 and he stuns you. So where Aegir turn cycles himself, Mimirr actually takes you out of the fight for 2 turns, assuming that, you pass both accuracy checks. Again, he does also get the speed and the HP recovery on the skill 3, giving him some sustain. He does turn cycle, but in a different way. He turn cycles by taking you out of the fight instead of giving himself attack bar back, and then again by boosting on his skill 2. The nice thing with Mimirr is if you pair him with a fast Lauren, and she doesn't have to be crazy fast, a Violent Will Lauren at I don't want to say a speed, guys, because we're all at different stages of the game, but just a Violent Will Lauren that's going to be equally as fast as the enemy team, and then you throw in the Mimirr speed lead, that Lauren will take first turn, she gets the strip and the pushback, which screws up their turn order, and then between the Lauren and Mimirr, the enemy is only going to have one monster that's really taking any turns at all, because the Lauren's got the pushback and the slow, and the Mimirr has the attack bar reduction and the stun. The Mimirr attack bar boosts himself, so you just get ridiculous amounts of turn cycling with those 2 monsters. So, some of my favorite PvP comps, I use Mimirr, Lauren, and Wusa against bruiser comps, or anything with a Jean. The Wusa makes sure that I'm never going to get provoked. If I somehow randomly do get provoked, the Lauren is going to push back the Jean, and the Mimirr will just kill her off the provokes. I like Mimirr, Lauren, and Perna against any Mo-Long comp. The Perna tanks the Mo-Long, the Mimirr and Lauren just control them. In 4-star siege bases, Mimirr, Lauren, and Yen. You build your Yen tanky so that, she can take, if you're going to bring it into a Skogul, she needs to be able to take the hit both from the Skogul Rock and the Commune. So probably 24,000 HP. But the Yen gives you even more control. She's going to give you attack bar pushback, obviously built-in procs, and just really high damage. The Lauren defense breaking, it's just GG. So, you guys can tell I got a man crush on Mimirr. Really, really fun monster to use. It's amazing to me how many times on stream people tell me, oh, I've got a Mimirr in my siege box and I haven't built him yet, or sorry, in my storage and I haven't built him yet. So guys, if you've got a Mimirr, build him. Pair him with Lauren plus any one monster that makes sense, and it's just GG. It's a lot of fun, too. So much control, so much turn cycling. Probably one of my favorite and most fun comps in the game. Now, in terms of stats, once again, super stat hungry. So if you look at this one, this is actually a little squishier than I would like. This is probably closer to the build that I would like to see. About 25k HP and then between 1,000 and 1,200 defense for, again, I use him in Guardian 3 content, but even when I used him in Guardian 1 content, I did need him to be about this tanky. Probably the difference is, as my runes have gotten better, I've had the ability to kind of build out some more stats around it. For example, getting him up to plus 900 attack where maybe he used to be plus 600. Getting him up to the 660 defense where maybe he used to be plus 500. So at that, low Guardian 1, or low Guardian 1, or Guardian 2 range, I would want to see him with at least like 23,000 to 25,000 HP, 1,000 defense, and then from there, definitely more than this 30 accuracy. I'm pretty sure that I have got some skill 3 accuracy. No, I don't actually. So this is this build is actually way too low. I want to see him around 50 accuracy because that skill 3, it's so important for the stun and the reset. I think this is the Mimirr I use a little bit more, obviously having 2. He does have a little bit more skill 3 accuracy, so the 8% there puts him to 51 total. That's kind of like where I would want to see the floor. So 51 accuracy, 70 to 85 crit rate. More crit rate is obviously better, but super stat hungry, so you got to make your sacrifices where you can. Speed tuning him, again, just make sure he's speed tuned with your Lauren, and then acting behind any other monsters that you want to act in front of him, but really Lauren is doing the setup. The build that I've got here, this build, if I remember correctly, this hits for about 25,000 without a brand, but on a defense break, no attack buff. And if I remember correctly, this guy hits for about 18,000, no attack buff, no brand, but on a defense break. So it kind of gives you an idea. And remember, you're doing that much damage, but you're also turn cycling where the enemy is barely ever taking a turn. So guys, that is it for our talk on the Barbarian King family. Once again, one of my favorite families. Hrungir is worthless, but Surtr does have his uses, and then Hraesvelg, Aegir, and Mimirr, 3 of the best Nat 4s, honestly. Mimirr is maybe top 5. For me, probably top 5 LD4s. I mean, he can't compare to like a Martina. Obviously, nothing can. Most LD5s can't. But he is definitely up there. And then the Aegir and the Wind BK among the Elemental Nat 4 is definitely top 5 as well. So guys, as always, I appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time. Hey guys, if you're still with me to this point, then that means that you probably liked the video, found it entertaining, or even better, both. So please smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment down below because those things help the channel grow, and more importantly, they show me that the video is useful, and that's the whole reason I do this in the first place.